The first instance of catching my wife in a lie was nearly humorous, but not quite. She casually stood in the kitchen, glancing at her phone while feigning ignorance of my presence. The aroma of coffee permeated the room, blending with a subtle scent of her pricey perfume, worn only on special occasions. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, barely glancing up. "My mother and I are contemplating a brief escape. You know, just a girl's trip, some leisure time." I leaned against the counter. "Where exactly?" she hesitated, revealing a fleeting expression, so swiftly that had I not been attentive, I would have failed to notice it. "Just a resort, nothing extraordinary," she replied nonchalantly. She waved her hand, as if it was of no consequence. "My mother has been under pressure, and I thought we could benefit from some sun." I should have inquired more. I should have sensed the casual tone in her voice, the avoidance of eye contact. But I didn't. I merely nodded. For what reason would I doubt my wife? 2 weeks later, Jessica and her mother Linda embarked on their tranquil vacation, and like a fool, I kissed her goodbye at the airport, oblivious that I was kissing a deception. They returned in the late afternoon on Sunday. Jessica hastily discarded her bag upon arrival and hurried towards the shower without pause. Linda wasn't far behind, mumbling about needing to purify the trip. I recall standing in the living room, observing them dash upstairs as if they were fleeing something. This was unusual. The following doctor's visit ensued. "We simply want a checkup," Jessica explained when asked. "You know, standard procedures. Travel can disrupt your body." Linda echoed from the couch, pretending to leaf through a magazine while concealing something. "Yes, sweetheart, we always do this after a trip. Nothing serious." I glanced at my father-in-law, Rick. He observed them similarly, just like someone who detected smoke yet couldn't locate its source. "Would you care to join us?" he inquired offhandedly. Jessica stiffened. Linda chuckled, though it was insincere. "Why, gentlemen visiting a gynecologist? A most amusing spectacle." Jessica attempted to bypass me, clutching her bag. "We'll return shortly." Rick and I shared a glance, then wordlessly followed them. The clinic was one of those immaculate, glass-encased facilities where the air reeked of antiseptic and wealth. Jessica and Linda vanished into an examination room while Rick and I waited outside, feigning interest in old magazines and pretending we weren't both on edge. Then the physician emerged, at which point we overheard it. A nurse whispered something to him, and he sighed audibly before replying, loud enough for anyone in the corridor to hear. "Given the circumstances of conception, additional tests will be necessary." Rick and I sat upright simultaneously. A shiver ran down my spine, replaced by a chilling dread that tightened around my chest. Jessica and Linda were oblivious to our presence as we eavesdropped on the ominous statement. The word conception left the man's lips, leaving Rick and me questioning what it meant. The phrase hung heavy between us, a loaded gun resting on the table. My thoughts raced ahead, seeking explanations for what we had just heard. Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. Maybe the doctor was referring to another patient. Perhaps the exam room door had opened. First emerged Jessica, adjusting her blouse's sleeve, her face inscrutable. However, Linda looked drained, as if the air had been abruptly taken from her. For the first time since their return, she appeared apprehensive. They hadn't expected us to be there, and I will never forget the instant before Jessica pasted a smile on her face. Her lips parted slightly in surprise before she regained composure. She questioned, her tone conversational. Rick responded ahead of my turn. "We're waiting." Laughing lightly, but without substance, Linda said, "Aren't you turning into a protective husband, Rick? We merely had routine exams, that's all." Ignoring Linda, I focused on Jessica. "What type of examination?" My voice was unexpectedly steady, cold. The grip on Jessica's purse tightened. It was the ordinary: blood work, minor dehydration due to travel. She was lying. Her speech had an unnatural cadence, and she wouldn't meet my gaze. Rick sighed audibly beside me. "That's peculiar," he remarked sarcastically. "Since we just caught your doctor mentioning conception, the simultaneous tension between them, that was the instant I figured it out. Something was highly unusual." Jessica forced a laugh. It was lifeless. Really, eavesdropping now? How charming. Linda intervened, waving her hand. Misheard, you must have. They weren't discussing anything of the sort. Doctors often discuss various topics, but Rick was moving towards his wife, so if I asked the doctor what he meant, he would likely repeat what you just said. This statement caused Linda's jaw to tighten, and Jessica seemed enraged, neither scared nor guilty, but angry. Goodness gracious, are you truly causing a scene right now? She exclaimed sharply. We've just returned from a trip, we're exhausted, and now you're accusing me of what? Being pregnant? Do I look pregnant to you? She crossed her arms, assuming a defensive posture. She was standing her ground. She was retaliating. For a brief moment, I felt the ground shake beneath me. Was there a possibility that I misunderstood? Could it be that I was imagining things? But then Rick said something that dispelled any lingering doubts I had. I'm not foolish, Linda, he said in a low, trembling voice, filled with controlled anger. Tell me truthfully, are you shielding her? Linda remained silent, and her silence spoke volumes. Her abrupt turn and hard swallow gave him his answer. That was all he needed. Jessica persisted with her rant, attempting to make this into a grand spectacle where she was the victim. However, his attention was no longer on her. He was observing his wife, the woman who had shared a life with him, realizing in that moment that he didn't recognize her at all. Taking a deliberate step forward, Jessica fell silent. Then, calmly, he posed the question, Jessica, whose child is this? The color left her face. Jessica blinked for the first time since this began. She seemed genuinely taken aback, as if she hadn't anticipated him exposing her act. Pardon me, she said, her voice sharp and defensive. He remained unflinching, not moving or blinking. The question hung heavy between them. Whose child is this? Jessica fidgeted uneasily, glancing briefly at her daughter. But her gaze was not on the child, it was on him. In that instant, I perceived the cogitating in her eyes, the mental gears churning. She had two alternatives: persist with the deception, entrench, attempt to manipulate her way out of this predicament, or confess and endeavor for damage control. She opted for the former. Wow, she sneered, shaking her head. You're absolutely crazy. I've just returned from a trip, and now you're standing in a doctor's office, accusing me of being pregnant with someone else's child. Unmoved, I remained still. Rick was quiet next to me, his knuckles whitening as he gripped tightly. Contrarily, Linda was restless, her hands wriggling as if she wanted to utter something but couldn't. I inhaled deeply, maintaining a composed and tranquil tone. I'll ask one more time, I said. Whose child? Is it? Jessica scoffed again. Goodness gracious, you're insane. It was then that Rick lost his temper. Stop lying, Jessica. His voice echoed through the corridor, alarming a passing nurse. Linda gasped. Jessica flinched. Never before had I witnessed my father-in-law in such anger. His face was crimson, his breath shallow and filled with unspoken wrath. He addressed his wife, his voice lowered to a dangerous growl. You were aware, weren't you? He accused. Linda swallowed hard, tears brimming in her eyes, but before she could respond, Jessica exploded. For the love of God, she shouted, throwing up her hands. Fine, if you truly want to know. She looked at me with eyes filled with rage. It's not yours, she declared bluntly. 3 words. Merely 3. And my world shattered. My ears buzzed. My heart pounded against my skull, a deafening roar in my mind. I had suspected it, but hearing the doctor, and now my wife utter those words with her voice tainted by contempt and venom, felt like a bullet wound to the chest. I opened my mouth, but no sound escaped. Jessica sneered. Don't look so surprised, she retorted. Truth you wanted? Here it is. Are you satisfied now? Rick moved closer to her. Who? His tone was ominous. Who's the father? She chuckled bitterly. You really think I'd tell you that? And in that instant, something within me shattered. For years, I'd been devoted to this woman, supporting her, constructing a life with her. Yet here she was, not merely confessing to betrayal, but ridiculing me for it. My teeth clenched, my voice trembling with rage. For how long? She sneered. Long enough. That was it. That was the moment I realized our marriage was over. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that a larger revelation still loomed ahead. For just as Jessica prepared to speak again, we heard something. A voice. From behind us. A male voice. It seems we've been deceiving ourselves long enough. We all turned at once, and standing there, unfazed, was someone I never could have foreseen. The sight of him sent a chill down my spine. There, arms folded, unaffected by the commotion around him, stood Mark, my closest friend. Jessica momentarily met his gaze, long enough for me to discern her panic before she transformed it into rage. However brief, that instant disclosed everything. Rick tensed beside me, breathing heavily, as if fighting to keep himself together. Linda paled noticeably, her hand going up to stifle a gasp. Jessica remained silent. Unbothered, Mark advanced, his composure unnerving. I thought I detected a fleeting smirk in his eyes. "I believe we need to discuss something," he said calmly. My heart pounded audibly in my neck. It was my best friend, the same one who had been at our wedding, the same one cradling my newborn son and expressing pride in me, the one I had confided in. I moved towards him, my knuckles white from clutching them so hard they left indentations on my palms. "I asked if you were joking," I nearly whispered. Jessica let out a loud, exasperated sigh and rolled her eyes. "For heaven's sake," she muttered under her breath. "Couldn't we do this somewhere else? This is too dramatic." Rick spun towards her so quickly it seemed like he'd been launched from a cannon. "You don't get to talk right now," he growled. Jessica jumped at the sound. Mark, though, remained unaffected. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if this situation was an inconvenience. "Let's go somewhere private," he suggested again, as if believing he had any power over the current circumstances. I lost my temper. "Tell me the truth, Mark," I shouted down the hallway. A passing nurse froze mid-step, her eyes widening before she hurriedly moved away. Jessica sighed once more, rubbing her temples. "Goodness gracious, calm down. You're making a scene." I spun to face her. "I'm making a scene?" My voice broke, anger and despair clashing within me. Mark smirked indifferently, as if the situation was merely a trivial dispute. His gaze fell upon himself, leaving his expression unreadable. In a measured tone, he asked, "Did you impregnate my daughter?" Mark exhaled audibly before locking eyes with me. He suggested we should converse. I chuckled humorlessly without response. "You don't have the authority to command me at this moment." He acknowledged this, turning instead to Rick. This was not meant to transpire in such a manner. Jessica moaned exasperatedly. "Can we dispense with the theatrics, please?" She crossed her arms and leant against the wall, appearing bored. I felt nauseous. Rick advanced cautiously towards Mark. "For how long?" His voice was soft yet menacing. Mark at last dropped his act somewhat. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw clenched. Jessica supplied the answer instead. "2 years," she said nonchalantly. The room fell silent, and for a brief instant I felt lightheaded. Rick's face became expressionless. 2 years of deception, treachery, and infidelity left Linda gasping for breath, while Mark remained motionless, fixing his gaze on the floor. Jessica's words were the last straw, deepening the wound. "Don't act so surprised," she scoffed. "I was growing tired of you anyway." Linda doesn't recall making the decision, but suddenly found herself propelled towards Mark by an uncontrollable rage. Jessica yelped and stepped aside, while Mark stood unflinchingly, his jaw set tight, watching the struggle against Rick's restraint. "Not here," Rick hissed in Linda's ear. "Not in a doctor's office." With all her might, Linda fought to suppress the primal rage surging within, trying to keep herself from tearing Mark apart. At that moment, Mark performed an action I will always remember vividly. He faced Jessica and smiled a gentle, knowing, intimate smile, as if they were revealing a secret before me, making the rest of us inconsequential. The smile was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but I saw it, and in an instant, something within me shattered. I ceased resisting Rick's grasp, stopped gasping for air, and paused everything because Mark's smile conveyed a message far more devastating than all the deceit and infidelity. Mark was not frightened, he was not ashamed, he was not remorseful. He had already triumphed in his mind. Jessica responded to him, still with her arms folded, giving him a look not one of guilt or regret, but one of pure amusement, as if we were all just having a tantrum over trivial matters. I retreated slowly, and Rick released me, observing cautiously, perhaps questioning whether I would attack again. But I did not. Instead, something unexpected happened. I laughed. A brief, gasping sound. The type that flees when your body is unsure between shouting or collapsing entirely. Jessica arched an eyebrow. Ah, fantastic. Here we go again. Now he's losing it. I disregarded her. I simply stared at Mark, my hands still trembling, but my voice unnaturally composed. You know what, buddy? I said. You actually did me a service. Mark looked puzzled. What? I let out another quiet laugh, shaking my head. You, this entire incident, you just delivered the biggest wake-up call of my life. Jessica sighed. And here comes the self-important soliloquy. Mark turned to her so swiftly she flinched. Keep your trap shut. His voice was ironclad. She complied, for once. I looked back at Mark. You stand there as if you've won some sort of trophy, I said. As if you've outsmarted me. As if this is a triumphant moment. Mark remained silent, but the glint in his eyes hinted that I had struck the mark. I stepped closer, my voice softening. Let me clarify something, Mark, I stated. You didn't emerge victorious. You stepped into a calamity instead. Jessica scoffed dismissively. Oh, come on. I paid no heed to her comment. It's your responsibility now, I informed him sternly. Her deceit, her dishonesty, her manipulative, selfish, gaslighting behavior, that's all on you, my friend. Mark tightened his jaw. Jessica let out a mocking laugh. How pathetic, she said. Sitting here pretending to be some tragic hero when you were the most uninteresting husband in existence. Here's a hint. Perhaps if you hadn't been so predictable, I wouldn't have sought solace elsewhere. Rick let out a low growl. However, I remained calm and simply smiled. As I had one final move to make, I turned my attention back to Mark, speaking in a hushed tone that only he could hear. By the way, I murmured, I also know about the other man. This revelation caused a significant shift in Mark's countenance. His expression momentarily froze, his lips parted slightly, and his eyes flickered briefly towards Jessica. This minor reaction told me everything I needed to know. Jessica's self-assured smile began to falter. What? I breathed out slowly, savoring the quiet. Ah, I feigned thoughtfulness. Seems like you weren't alone in this chase, Mark. Mark glanced at Jessica. Jessica looked back at me. For the first time since this ordeal began, she showed signs of unease. For the first time since this calamity started, Jessica lost composure. Her certainty faltered for a moment. But it was there, a brief hesitation, a fleeting instant of sheer terror before she restored her facade to nonchalance. Mark, however, wasn't as adept at concealing his feelings. His complexion drained, his jaw clenched. His gaze remained fixed on Jessica, as if he was seeing her anew. What in the world does he mean? He whispered, voice tense. Jessica let out a brittle, insincere laugh. Oh, come now, don't be ridiculous. He's merely trying to upset you. I crossed my arms, watching the fissures appear. Upsetting me, I echoed. Are you certain about that, Jess? She faced me, eyebrows lowering. Smirking at you, I queried where she had been on May 14th. Her countenance fell. Mark promptly turned to her again. What transpired on May 14th? His voice tightened now. Jessica derided, Oh my God, don't tell me you're actually considering this nonsense. Answer the question. Mark's voice echoed through the corridor. Jessica closed her mouth. A pause ensued, followed by a long hesitation from her. Too prolonged. Much too lengthy. Mark retreated slowly. The truth was dawning on him. He had believed he controlled the situation. He thought he had emerged victorious in this game. That he had snatched Jessica away from you. However, now he was seeing what I had recently understood myself. Jessica wasn't a prize to be won. She was a walking catastrophe, a liar so ensnared in her own web that not even her other partner was safe. I chose to assist him. Allow me to jog your memory, I said nonchalantly. That was the weekend she told me she was visiting her cousin in Chicago. I gave him a moment before delivering the decisive blow, but you won't believe this, Mark. It turns out Jessica wasn't in Chicago. The news left Jessica stiff with shock. Mark retreated further, shaking his head despairingly. No, he whispered, this can't be. I cut in, urging him to ask where she was truly located, who she was actually with. As our eyes met, I saw a glint of fear in hers, raw, authentic, the kind that cornered an animal. It felt exhilarating. Mark continued to stare at her, his breaths coming unevenly, hoping for some response. Any response? Jessica's mouth opened and closed repeatedly. And then, in a moment, I saw the instant she comprehended her predicament. Her stance altered. Her expression fell blank. Then, as if expected, she shrugged nonchalantly. So what? She said those 3 words, that was all. That was her response. Mark seemed to have been struck. Linda gasped from our side. Mark ran his hand down his face, on the verge of vomiting. I merely gave a calm, quiet laugh. For indeed, this was splendid. Mark had deceived me, and so did Jessica. Now they were both struggling on a sinking vessel. It was also unfavorable for Jessica's side. Oh well, it's not such a significant matter. All of you are behaving like children. I enjoyed myself, I said casually. Fine, that was all it was. It didn't hold any deeper meaning. Mark shuddered at this. It didn't mean anything, Jessica scoffed. Goodness gracious, don't even start. Mark clenched his fists. You told me you cared for me. Jessica sneered. Really? Do you truly believe that? A pause followed, heavy and crushing. Mark's entire visage crumbled. And thus, he realized, he wasn't unique. He wasn't extraordinary. He was merely another fool I manipulated and abandoned. Just like me. Jessica yawned widely and complained, Gosh, this has been draining. Can we move on? Rick sighed deeply. You're the most revolting, self-centered little. Jessica snapped her fingers at her own father. Hold your tongue, Dad, she said. I couldn't care less. I glanced at Mark, who was still looking shattered. Then, barely audible, I said, Well done, mate. You've got her. I strolled away without looking back. I didn't have to. Behind me, I could hear Jessica snorting, Mark struggling to maintain his composure, and Rick cursing under his breath. But it no longer mattered. I had my answer. Jessica was not only a deceiver, but also flaunted her dishonesty. It was that part which churned my stomach. The way she acted as if this was all trivial, as if we were the problem for caring, as if she possessed any remorse. I made it halfway down the hallway before I heard footsteps following me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Mark. Hey! His voice quivered, but he was trying to sound strong, attempting to maintain an air of dominance. We're not finished here. He halted me, gradually, taking a deep breath. The wind shifted, and there stood Mark, his shoulders rigid. His hands were balled into fists at his sides, as if daring me to retaliate. It seemed he was irritated with me for revealing the truth. I gazed at him steadily for quite some time before bursting into laughter, right in his face. This enraged him further. You find this amusing, he spat angrily. You consider this a joke? I swiped at my face, still chuckling. Friend, I said, shaking my head. You're standing there, appearing as if you're about to attack me, when I just did the greatest favor for you in your life. Mark's jaw stiffened. Go to hell. I advanced nearer. No, go to hell. He shuddered slightly, but I observed it. You're upset with me, I asked softly. For what? For disrupting your little fantasy. For reminding you that you're not some kind of alpha male who stole another man's spouse. You were merely another foolish one on her list. His nostrils widened. Silence. I grinned. Prove it. He advanced half a step, and for an instant I thought he would strike. But then, behind him, Jessica yelled, Oh my God, are you still feuding over me? Both of us turned. Jessica was leaning against the wall, arms folded, looking exasperated. Boys, 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 she said, shaking her head. This is honestly pitiful. Mark faced her, his expression inscrutable. You deceived me, he said softly. His voice was calm now. Jessica merely shrugged. Yes. And Mark blinked. And she exhaled theatrically. Goodness, grow up. Didn't we have fun? Mark's countenance distorted. I was in love with you. Jessica sneered. That seems to be a problem for you. That was it. That was when Mark ultimately shattered. His entire physique stiffened. His face transformed from sorrow to fury in an instant. And just like that, Jessica lost him as well. In his eyes, it was clear. The revelation. For 2 years, Mark believed he had triumphed in some game, taken something from me, deemed special. But now, he understood he meant nothing to her. Just another pawn. I patted him on the back. Hard luck, buddy. Then I faced Jessica. I'll return home later to gather my belongings. Jessica scoffed. All right, just keep your hands off my stuff. Mark looked at her as if he had never seen her before. I, however, smiled because for the first time in 2 years, I was liberated. That clinic no longer held a mind clear of doubts for me in years. Jessica, to me, was non-existent. Mark, insignificant. Yet, there remained one final task. I wouldn't depart without a fuss. Upon returning home, Jessica had already retreated to the bedroom. Perfect. I didn't require her company. I needed time to prepare. I seated myself on the couch, took out my phone, and started compiling evidence, screenshots, emails, bank statements. All the evidence I had amassed. Here's the crucial point. It wasn't merely leaving that I was doing, but rather I was planning to devastate her. She believed herself immune, under the impression that she could act freely without repercussions. She was on the verge of discovering otherwise. The following morning, I woke up early. Jessica eventually descended, stretching, wearing one of my old shirts. I almost chuckled. That trick wouldn't work anymore. She noticed me by the table, laptop open, documents scattered. She sighed audibly. Oh dear God, are you still being overly dramatic about this? I raised my gaze to her. Composed, unruffled. I had already filed for divorce, I informed her. She paused briefly. Then she scoffed, uttering under her breath. Please. She sneered, shaking her head. You don't have the nerve. I pushed a folder towards her. She looked it over, then froze, for her eyes fell on the stack of papers which contained proof of her infidelity with Mark, her extravagant spending, bank transfers to a hotel she swore never to visit, and a prenuptial agreement. Once married, a document she thought irrelevant had been signed by her. It proved significant when her face paled at its mention. What is this? She asked, while I relaxed in my seat. Just some casual documents. They state you receive nothing, I explained, reaching for my phone to add, I've already sent copies to your father. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she checked her messages and saw Rick's response. You disgust me. You are not my daughter anymore. Jessica appeared shaken, looking scared for the first time at me, whispering, You're ruining my life. I smiled, then Mark burst through the front door, his eyes ablaze with anger, causing Jessica to gasp. What are you doing here? Mark advanced aggressively, placing a crumpled envelope on the table. Jessica hesitated before picking it up and opening it cautiously. Her eyes scanned the document inside swiftly. Then she froze, staring at Mark with horror. Mark's voice turned menacing. You deceived me, he said accusingly. Jessica gulped audibly. Mark, you made me believe I was the father. My eyebrows arched in surprise. I turned to look at Jessica as her grin broadened. Hold on a second. He wasn't the father? Jessica's hands trembled uncontrollably. Mark banged his fist on the table angrily. Who is it then? Jessica remained silent, unable to respond because for the first time in her self-centered life, she felt utterly powerless and vulnerable. Standing there with the test results clutched tightly, Jessica was speechless. Mark's breathing became ragged as he waited for an explanation. You lied to me, I remarked calmly from my seat, folding my arms across my chest and watching the unfolding scene. She swiftly nodded, striving to regain composure. Mark, pay attention. This is the father. He bellowed. She winced. Then, as usual, she deceived. It's yours, she stammered, forcing a grin. The test must be faulty. We'll take another one. At that instant, I noticed it. The precise moment when he comprehended. Jessica wasn't merely unfaithful or self-centered. She was a void, sucking in everyone who approached too closely, twisting them, exhausting them until there was nothing left. Mark cautiously retreated. His breathing became steady. His countenance had altered. Not furious, not even wounded anymore, merely cold. "I relinquished everything for you," he whispered. Jessica stood still. Mark's jaw tightened. "I terminated my relationship for you. I damaged my friendships. I invested 2 years believing you loved me." Jessica swallowed. "Mark, I nearly lost my job because of you." His voice was escalating now. Jessica's lips tightened. Now she realized she was left without any recourse. Mark moved another cautious step away, then let out a harsh, disheartened laugh. "Wow," he mumbled, seemingly shocked. "I believed I had taken you from him." Turning to me, he confessed, "I thought I had triumphed." He smirked at me. "How does that suit you?" Mark breathed out sharply, then faced Jessica again. "I regret everything." Jessica flinched as if struck. For once, she was speechless, bereft of her usual gaslighting, emotional manipulations, or tears. Mark shook his head, backed away, and walked towards the door without a word, looking back neither now nor forever. In an instant, panic overwhelmed Jessica. She lunged forward, as if to follow him, but I stopped her, gripping her wrist firmly and unwaveringly. Her eyes widened, staring at me in disbelief. I returned a smile. "And now you stand alone." Her mouth opened and closed, yet no words came. Again opened, yet she found no words. The house of deceptions she constructed, dismantled completely. And me, now liberated. Jessica stiffened, her wrist ensnared by my grasp, breaths labored and irregular. For the first time since this saga's onset, she was not the commander. No falsehoods, no psychological manipulations, just quietude. I released her wrist, gradually, methodically. She recoiled, blinking rapidly, as if attempting to understand how things had veered so disastrously awry. Mark disappeared, Rick deserted her, and now I was departing too. I inhaled deeply, then slowly expelled the breath, before finally breaking the silence. "Did you deceive me for 2 years?" I asked, my voice remarkably composed. 2 years concealing secrets. 2 years mocking while I believed in your sincerity. She gulped. "Me?" "Hush." Her response was unexpected. For once, she remained silent. I leaned closer, whispering, "Remember this instant." She flinched. "Understand this moment." I persisted. "In that instant, you comprehend that you aren't unique or invulnerable. No, you aren't a puppet master manipulating others without repercussions." She quivered her lower lip, not from sorrow, but fury. Good, she deserved it. "I am departing," I stated flatly, "and with me go my dignity, my wealth, and my prospects." Her eyes flashed, revealing the genuine Jessica, contorted in anger. "Do you think you're superior to me?" She spat angrily. "You are simply a pathetic failure who never met my expectations. You were fortunate just to have me at all." I smiled serenely, untouched by emotion. "And yet," I said, tilting my head, "it is I who walks away with everything, and you possess nothing." Jessica's expression fractured. Pure, unadulterated rage. I didn't linger to hear her following protestations, insults, or futile attempts to regain control. I turned, snatched my bag, and exited the room. The ensuing weeks were a haze. After relocating and altering my contact details, I blocked her on every platform. Jessica persisted in reaching out, through voicemails, emails, and even visiting my workplace. However, I disregarded each attempt as I had reached my limit. For the first time in years, I felt liberated. A month later, I received one final notice. Mark departed the state, vanishing entirely. Jessica was unraveling. It was rumored that she lost her job following a heated argument with her supervisor. Linda ceased communication with her. Rick persisted in denying her presence. As for me, I had never been more content, as I had finally grasped the most important lesson. Some individuals don't warrant closure. They deserve to remain in the same state of destruction that they left themselves in. Consequently, that is precisely what I did.